Let me ask you something. Have you ever peeked across the salon and saw a new stylist sectioning for a pixie cut and thought, oh no, please, not like that? You're mid email, the front desk is trying to find you, payroll is due in 2 hours. And even though every bone in your body wants to run over and grab the shears, you don't. You look the other way. Does this sound familiar? It's one of those moments where you realize you're the system, and that system is overworked, overwhelmed, and on the edge of burnout. And the truth is, training a new team member isn't just about how to cut a pixie. It's not about foils or formulas or blowouts. It's about mindset. And mindset can't be taught in a rush, in between guests, or even through osmosis. It takes structure, it takes strategy, it takes systems.
Yeah, so good. So today we want to walk you through the 4 phases of building what we call a $1 million beauty pro program and how salon owners just like you are unknowingly spending over, are you ready for this? $20,000 at least per new beauty pro without seeing a real return. So, if you're excited about this, this is the perfect podcast for you because we're going to break it down. So, let's kick it off with part one, the hidden cost of training. And so, you might not think of it this way, but every time you bring in a new hire, you're not just giving them a job, you're making an investment. And that investment, man, it stacks up really quick. It adds up really fast. And you're paying for the hours they shadow, you're covering for their mistakes, you're building their books, often before they're even ready. I know I've been there before, right? And most of all, you're sacrificing your own time to coach and course correct. And when you look at the real math, like I said earlier, the average cost to train a new beauty pro is over $20,000. That's per person.
Hmm.
And if you don't have a clear development path in place, you risk losing that beauty pro before they ever become profitable for you as a salon company. So that's one person. If you have 4 people, let's see, that'd be $80,000.
Mhm.
$80,000 that it's taking you to train those people.
Oh, yes. And, we've seen it happen. Talented, creative, friendly, but they never made it past the first 6 months. Not because they didn't have skills, but because they didn't have a path. So let's talk about Dan Kennedy's 4 levels of leadership. This is something we love so much. So let's really dive into how do we prevent that. So we're excited to introduce you to something Dan Kennedy taught us called the 4 phases of leadership and how it applies to growing a successful salon team. So, are you ready for this? Step 1 is teaching. So, this is where most salon owners stop. We teach how to tone, we teach how to lash map, we teach how to cut, we teach how to greet, we do demos, we share formulas, but here's the truth: teaching alone doesn't create transformation. When you have everyone on your team teaching, it's like playing a game of telephone. Maybe you remember
Mhm.
that from grade school, playing telephone. It's like you tell them how to do a haircut or color, and then they tell the next person, because you're training new trainers inside of your team all the time. But one day you show up to class and realize that the message became something totally different than the original message you were trying to share. And what that taught us is that there's a difference between teaching and transforming. And that was a big missing component.
Teaching and transforming. Well, there's a big difference. I love what you said, Lindsay, between teaching and transforming. Because, man, when you really truly transform someone, just like a butterfly, they can never go back to their old ways. So you really install that pixie cut or that mindset that goes along with that pixie cut,
Mhm.
they'll be able to duplicate and duplicate and duplicate that. I love that you said that. So let's break it down for the step or stage one of the leadership phase. And this is the telling phase. So the telling phase is this is where expectations begin. Now you're telling them what the standards are. This is how we do consultations, or this is how you offer product. Like structure begins to form and they stop guessing. I've seen this before in the telling phase is if you have a co-stylist working with an educator and the co-stylist is new, right? And the educator, it's their first day. They bring over the co-stylist to work with the client or the guest. And they're like, the educator asks the co-stylist, so what do you think we should do? And in that moment, the co-stylist is like, I don't even speak English anymore. I don't even I don't even know what to say. It's because we haven't even told them what to say. So we truly this is so powerful, you guys. I want to make sure you're grasping this. Like we have to tell them what to say. We have to tell them, hey, ask what's been the best part of the day. Ask them what's the most important thing for you. Like we have to set them up for success or almost can come from a place of abuse. And so making sure that we're being really crystal clear about telling them what our standards are, how we do things, the why we do it this way, the how we say it this way, because that's truly going to set them up for success.
So good. So, once you've really put in that teaching and then you've gone to that step two of telling, that's when you get into step three, which is all about selling. So, this is where the magic happens, you guys. This is where they begin to sell themselves on the system. It's like they believe in the process, they see the value, and they start owning their own growth. And that's when things get fun. When they really dive into the why behind, why we're doing this, it's like they just become natural at it. It's such a transformational part of that four-step process.
I love in the selling phase too, where you start to celebrate them. Like,
Yeah.
okay, Lindsay, great way to crush that, wow
Mhm.
check in or that love
Mhm.
checkout. That's always a beautiful way to water those seeds that you've planted in there to truly help them grow and recognize that in themselves. And so
Mhm.
after you go through, teaching and telling and selling, the last part of that is the delegating. And now this is where they get the opportunity to lead. Now they're teaching the new beauty pro or the new hire. They're modeling your culture without you hovering. Wouldn't that be so nice? They're modeling your culture without you hovering. And that's how you go from burnout to scalability. And let's be honest, if you're stuck in teaching and telling all day long, whew, man, you will be exhausted. Like you will never have the space to grow your business. You'll always be the one to grab the shears, but also the one that's holding yourself back.
Mm. Yes, it's so good. Jen, let's actually go back to that pixie cut story that we talked about in the beginning because, I know you've been there. You're watching this sectioning and your stomach drops, because the stylist is sweet, she's eager, but this isn't going to end well. And now you're thinking, do I stop her and risk shattering her confidence? Do I jump in and fix it, but embarrass her in front of the guest? Do I just pray the client brought a hat? What do you do in this moment? Because in that moment, what you're really saying is, I wish I had a system. I wish I didn't have to be this system, because what if there was a better way?
Yeah. What if there was a better way? Like, listen up.
Mhm.
What if you didn't have to be the savior? What if your beauty pros, right after that questionable pixie section, had access to real training, not just a video to watch in the break room, but an actual interactive class led by a coach, a class where they follow along in real time, where they practice the work as they go, where they get feedback, where they are held accountable, and they truly start to see themselves as $1 million beauty pro.
Mm. Yeah, because that'll transform them. They won't just be someone who's doing hair or doing skin or lashes, but they'll start to see themselves as somebody who's growing on purpose, and that's the power of the $1 million beauty pro system. It's not a course, it's a culture shift. It turns your team into professionals who think way bigger than the average beauty pro. It's stylists or estheticians who really understand their client psychology. It's beauty pros who know their numbers. And it's leaders who stay because they're finally seen and developed. Because I know this has happened to you as a salon owner before. You've walked into the back room and your team is all mindlessly scrolling on their phones, maybe even accidentally stumbling upon a video of, let's say, a booth rental stylist complaining about whatever it was for that day or creating fear for them inside of their business or life because they don't have all the tools that your team has available to them. Or maybe they're even just reading a book that has nothing to do with furthering their career. And the truth is, you're so busy, you don't have time to direct their downtime. You know, that's where you insert $1 million beauty pro. Now they're spending their downtime in a live training or watching a video on demand to further their career. Something that actually makes a difference in their life and shifts their mindset. And it's built specifically for team based salons.
That brings me to a story when I think about one of our amazing salon owners who's in our program who actually doesn't do hair by trade or have her license to do so, but she is the salon owner. And so normally, that would create a lot of confusion on how you're supposed to teach your hairstylist through any cutting or coloring questions that they have. So she would find someone who was the best, like the best out of the group to teach them, even if they only had like 6 months to a year experience. And then they would get this like big ego that they're now doing all the work and they would eventually leave. But by inserting $1 Million Beauty Pro, now that fear and story is actually gone forever because she has the training tools to be able to train her team, even because she doesn't know the ways to do hair. That's okay. The $1 Million Beauty Pro is setting her salon up for success.
Yes, I love that. She is, that's an incredible story. And I just love that. And, maybe you can relate to that. Maybe you don't have your license or, maybe you have a salon director who doesn't, whatever that looks like in your team. Because we know that it's mindset before skill set. And we say this a lot inside of our coaching program. You can teach a haircut or a facial or, lashes, whatever it might be, in 6 weeks. But confidence takes a system. So if you've ever had a stylist or an esthetician, any kind of beauty pro say, that they have anxiety, that comes from not having the confidence. So the stylist who sticks with you, the one who grows your brand, they help lead your team, they hit 6 figures while working less than 30 hours a week, they didn't just get better at hair or skin. They got better at thinking. They got the mindset of $1 million beauty pro.
Yeah. And it's tried and true. When you have these kind of trainings at the end of the career, why do we call it $1 Million Beauty Pro? Because these people that go through this training will make more than $1 million if in their lifetime of being a beauty pro. Like, it is so true. And so when you think about it, from that $20,000 cost to that 7-figure return, let's really wrap it up with this, that every new hire is a $20,000 bet. Every new hire is a $20,000 bet. So think to yourself, are you building a system that makes that bet pay off? Are you hoping, your fingers crossed, are you hoping, praying, and looking the other way when that pixie section goes south? And think about this. If you're truly ready to create a real growth plan for your team, if you want to stop babysitting and start delegating, and if you want a team that thinks, acts, and performs like $1 million beauty pro, then it's time we talk.
Yes, you guys, because we're so excited because we are launching our next cohort soon. And we're looking for salon owners who are done doing it all alone. So text us the word pro, that's PRO, to the number 469 283 5590 to learn more. Because when your team wins and your salon scales and that pixie cut, it becomes a story that you're proud of. That's when everybody wins.